Hello, good evening. I was just having some thoughts that maybe some things to consider. I want to talk about my generation, the X generation. I think it's quite interesting that they would represent us with the X, which later on became infamous for many other things, like Latinx, etc. It tends to negate things, doesn't it? That variable in algebra that you're always looking for? Well, I guess that would be us, the variable that everybody is always looking for and trying to figure out. Well, let's talk about the mathematical equation and what we were given as our generation. I was born in 1970. During the Vietnam War, my father was a pilot for the Army. He did not see combat, and I won't get into that, but there were a lot of accidents and things during flight training and things that they did, but he did fly a general around. But there were others in the family who, weren't so lucky, and then cousins and things. But then there were also, being the children of that generation, we grew up having friends who their fathers did not come back. So there was a lot of stepfather situations. There were cases where the fathers did come back. One of my best friends, and he basically wanted her to have an abortion because it was just legalized, and she wouldn't do it, and he ended up leaving. He was quite messed up from the war. And you have to understand that these men came back without a parade and no fanfare, and they were considered animals, which in turn messed up quite a bit in our generation, the children of these. I remember having a slumber party at a girl's house, and her father, in the middle of the night, was walking. We were in the living room. We had created a big pallet on the floor, and our father came in the middle of the night walking through, and he had a knife. He was sleepwalking and having a flashback from the war, and somehow the mother stopped him or got his attention without anybody getting hurt, thankfully. Anyway, there were situations like that. I was a bartender in my younger years in Colorado, and there were several vets who lived up in the mountains in the caves because you had natural hot springs, and they would stay warm year round. And they would come down like once a month and drink with their check quite a bit, and I had many stories that were very personable. Personable in the word. They were very personal. And sometimes hard to hear, but I think necessary, actually, in building my character and understanding some of these people, these men, and what they went through, and having some compassion instead of thinking of them as crazy, as some people did. Some people can't handle certain things at all. It depends on your personality. It depends on exactly what happened. There's a limit to what people can take sometimes. And the ones who can take a whole lot, you have to question them also on how it is they can do that. So, but then the generation older than them, which would be my grandparents who were in World War II, one of them in particular, I saw a lot of medals. I do remember the Bronze Star for sure, but there were more than that. And I asked about them, and he sternly said to me, looking at me directly, to never ask him about the war again. He was in the Army during World War II, and he was in the Navy during Korea. I now understand that he chose the Navy for Korea because I guess what happened in World War II was just too much, but he still felt an obligation to serve. And probably for financial reasons too. But these men were affected. I know from stories of how my father grew up that it definitely affected the family, because these men came back and they weren't properly taken care of to make sure that they could go back into the family without any problems. And the wives, a lot of them were damaged also. And of course Vietnam, and then the Gulf War, a lot of those, the same thing. By then post-traumatic stress disorder is recognized, but speaking from personal experience, because I've had it, I have it, you don't get rid of it, but mine is not war related, but I can tell you that their methods are very weak on how it is that they help people. It's it's weak. So we are the X generation, and so in the 70s you had the federal government take over the education system. It took them a while, I'm sure, to get their tendrils into it completely, so I'm sure I got a lot of the benefit, and I always said I was the last one out, which I think is somewhat true. It took them a while to get everything implemented and in place. The government's slow. They're fast at collecting the money, but slow at getting their things together or being efficient in any way. So the damage started there. Women were starting to get divorces, some for good reason, like the situations that I was talking about in these war situations, and these men coming back and changed, and they can be very damaging. But through no fault of their own, they were doing what they thought was right. And then you have the 70s, the me decade. We watched a lot of debauchery going on in that decade. I mean, just the music was fantastic, but the behavior was not so much so. The hippies from the 60s bled over into the 70s, and you had, like disco music, and which wasn't bad, but Area 51, VCRs, pornography becoming huge beyond Playboy onto VCRs and disc, and I mean, the advent eventually of we're still in the 70s, so the 80s, fantastic music, but materialism was extremely stressed by that point. It was a big boom, and it was just a continuation of my parents, the me generation, and just gluttony, really, for those that could, and even for those that couldn't. Just trying always to keep up with the Joneses, which carries on till today. I mean, you'll go in the worst neighborhoods and they'll have on the best clothes, best cars, some of them. I mean, so we're the bridge. We're the bridge. We can see what was good. Even my great-grandmother. I mean, that generation had problems too, but we can see the good that we left and the bad that we created and some of the good that we kept and a lot of the good we got rid of. Moving the men out of the houses, making it too easy to make the wrong decisions in life. Being hasty, wanting immediate gratification, not sitting back and thinking about things, being impatient, not having the proper guidance from our parents as to what to do and what is right. Many of us not even being raised in our communities with extended family for guidance. Many of us raising ourselves. We are the latchkey generation. That means that we came home to empty houses and let ourselves in, and we took care of ourselves until our parents got home. For those that were fortunate enough to have parents that were still together. But on the brighter side, let's look at the X generation. We're very aware of what's going on, a lot of us. We've been hiding behind the shadows of this boomer generation. And we've been watching their destruction for a very, very long time. We lived their destruction in our younger years, and it affected us, unfortunately, in raising some of you. But we tried to do better than our parents did for us. A lot of us tried very hard. Many failed. I failed along the way, and I made mistakes. But the difference between me and my parents' generation that I know of is I learned from my mistakes and I tried to get better because I did not want it to continue like it did for the boomers and then for my children. So I hope somewhere along the way I might have done a little bit better, but I still see that there's lingering damage for all of us. So for the X generation, we have a lot to offer. We made it many years into our adulthood without all this technology. We still have some of the knowledge from the older ways, some of us. We know about the lies long before any of this current situation that we're in. For those of us who paid attention. and wanted to do better. On behalf of those of us who wanted to do better, we apologize for allowing the boomers to run buckshot over this country and not stepping up when needed and getting some of them out of the way. They are quite a force to deal with. They're the ones that were given everything, pretty much. They were the ones that grew up in the glory years before Vietnam and after World War II. But many of them paid a heavy price and got damaged in the Vietnam War. So, for the vets, give them a break. But for the rest of them, pay attention. Your children know who you are. And some of us are moving up into positions, and I hope that they tried, many of them, like me, to learn from their parents' mistakes and the mistakes that they made and carried with them into adulthood because they had no guidance, but learned from them and made changes. I have to believe there are others. And we're smart enough to stay in the shadows. Our parents taught us very well. But don't be mistaken, we have our boundaries. And as I set that line in the sand with my mother, I think other people have also created a line in the sand. We will see. In that I have hope. Continue to pray. It's essential. Continue to try and do good. Don't be too hard on yourself. But don't be too easy either. Always remain good. Enjoy what you have. Strive to do better. And have hope. Gather knowledge. Remember, knowledge is essential. It's the biggest weapon they have, is for the population to remain ignorant and stupid. And I refuse to do that. I might not know everything, but I know. And I'm very good at picking up and suspecting when someone's not telling me the truth. Discernment is also key. Keep that in mind. I'm sorry that the world is not a perfect place, but I never really thought it was. I was raised by these people. So, they're not all bad. They're just a little twisted. But there's many among them that are very, 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 very wrong. Very wrong. And they've been getting away with things for a very, very, very long time. And this is the result. So, hang in there. We have to have change. We have to have change, just like I had to change. Because this can't continue and have a world that we're worthy to live in. I mean, really, It's embarrassing. Love to you all. I will definitely talk to you later. Bye for now.